What does Alan Johnston think about the future of WebRTC? Are you guys pumped over there at Avaya, and you personally? What's going on?
Yeah, no, it's pretty exciting times. In fact, it kind of reminds me of some of the early days of SIP.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. No, I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like deja vu, because some of the things that WebRTC is actually going to do are things that we thought SIP was going to do.
Yeah.
We really thought SIP was going to, end up in the browser. And, for a variety of reasons, it didn't quite happen. But, WebRTC I think it has a really good shot at doing that. And I think the other big difference is going to be, it took SIP years and years to get critical mass and to get adoption. And I think that's because, SIP was a protocol, and it required, a lot of investment. It required a lot of training of developers on how to use it. And if you look at WebRTC, it's really putting these tools in the hands of web developers, and millions of them out there. And they're just going to take it and run with it and do all kinds of things with it that you and I can't imagine. So it's going to be real interesting.
What drove you to write the book? And it's really early. This is a work in progress, obviously, but you obviously think that it has a future enough to dedicate the resources on your side to write it all down. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you thought now is a good time to write that book, and maybe even give us a little bit of subject matter in terms of the audience that you think that book speaks to.
Yeah. Well, actually, going back, I can go back, maybe 3-4 years to when we really started thinking about this, and I actually wrote a draft with Henry Sinreich. You remember old Henry?
I do.
And the draft was called like SIP APIs or something. And it was about, we were thinking in terms of what can we do to put the power of SIP in the hands of developers.
Yeah.
And it was becoming clear by then that APIs are the way to do it. Developers don't want to learn protocols; they just want to learn APIs. So we were, back then we were already thinking about, how can we get APIs out there in the hands of developers? And of course, a couple of years later was when the WebRTC effort, took off. And the interesting thing is that its focus is a little bit different, right? WebRTC is all about the media, and it's not really about the signaling. So Henry and I weren't exactly on target with our SIP APIs, but the goal that we were trying to do, how to get the power to establish real-time communication sessions into the hands of developers, that's really what WebRTC is all about, and that's something that I've been thinking about for years. And just watching the standards move, things have moved pretty quickly so far. There's still a fair way to go. And, I also discovered that there's quite a lot of confusion about WebRTC.
Oh, God, is there ever?
And it didn't help that Google called their open source project the same thing as the standard. So people are confusing the GIPS codec set with WebRTC.
Yeah.
And, they're obviously not the same thing.
Right.
There's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of people, interested in it, just had this feel of something that was really getting ready to take off, and that's what prompted me to write the book. And it's kind of interesting. The book itself, as you say, it's really quite early in this whole WebRTC process, and I think a conventional publisher actually wouldn't have wanted to do a book right now. They would have said, let's wait 6 months, let's wait a year for it to be more stable. But because of today's print-on-demand technology, ebooks, we were basically able to write this book and put it out there as an early edition, knowing that we're going to do frequent updates of it. We might do 2, maybe 3 editions every year of the book just to keep it current.
That's awesome.
But that way, people always have a reference which is up to date, it's tracking the standards, and I think people will find it useful. We've gotten a lot of feedback so far that people think it's good, and that it sort of fills in the sort of cracks that the standards have.
When you wrote that book, was Jessup as far along as it is now? I did read the book, but I don't recall seeing a whole lot about the signaling layer.
No, there's the details of Jessup are actually still a little bit
early
up in the air.
Yeah.
And so we haven't covered it. The parts of WebRTC that we thought were the most stable and that were the most sort of fundamental were the ones that we spent the most time in the book. For example, there's a whole chapter about peer-to-peer media, and why peer-to-peer media is different from server relayed media. why NAT traversal is an issue, and why firewalls are an issue, and what hole punching is, things like that are obviously key to WebRTC, and those things aren't going to change. But yeah, the details of the JavaScript session establishment protocol are still to be worked out, and as they do get finalized, they'll be in future editions.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So it's kind of my understanding that this data layer, this data channel, that they're going to be exposing more via Jessup and being utilized by Jessup, I guess, more or less, is primarily for signaling between the browser and the app.
Yeah, I mean, basically there's some sort of an offer-answer state machine going on inside the browser.
Right.
And Jessup is the way that using APIs that you either drive the state machine or you get the state of the state machine and do all that. And your actual on-the-wire signaling protocol can be anything you want. Or in some cases, even though it sounds strange to us who are used to protocols and SIP, in some cases you don't even need a signaling protocol.
Just use HTTP, right?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to have some sort of control. And your application, whatever it is, has a logic that says, here's when you turn on the camera, here's when you turn on the microphone, here's the way you render the user interface at that time. But strictly speaking, you don't have to map to, here is the ringing state, here is the answered state, here is the early media state. It's just whatever your application needs to do, you can do it.
I'm positive this is going to be the next coming. I think it's going to be a bit of a paradigm shift for communications, to be honest.
It is. It's really going to shake things up, and exactly which way and how it's going to shake up. I think it's not clear right now, but it's definitely going to make a lot of changes.
Oh yeah.
But when you give APIs of this power in the hands of the millions of web developers out there, they're going to go crazy. And even we spend a lot of time thinking about voice and video communication, but there is also this capability to just have unformatted data exchange between the browsers. And for applications like gaming, that could be really big. For applications like remote telemetry, you think of telemedicine or something where you might have information that you want to stream from in real time. There's just all kinds of applications of that we haven't really thought of yet.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Hookflash created OpenPeer as well, because we were really excited about the idea of being able to provide a signaling protocol in that data channel that would allow people to do a lot of these advanced features without having to do all of the heavy lifting themselves, right?
Whatever you can do to make things simpler for developers, whatever you can do in terms of giving them libraries that they can use to call things, so that they can just okay, here's my problem, and they look around for a solution, there it is, and then off they go. That's what they want, and I think there'll be a lot of different libraries that will spring up around WebRTC, and it'll be very interesting to see how those develop and in what direction they go.
You're obviously employed by a rather large infrastructure provider. What do they think about all this? Can you speak on behalf of Avaya?
Obviously, we're following the work and contributing to it.
Right.
And our research guys are having a ball with prototypes and the like. And it's just really early days to see how it's going to impact things. I think it definitely will impact things. It's just a question of how and when. But it's also really hard to get people to understand. I mean, we're used to the sort of slow-moving telephony world where things take years, if not decades, to happen. And WebRTC is going to roll out in internet time. And as soon as these APIs are in generally available browsers and they're stable and they work, people are just going to start.
Yeah.
That's going to take off. And once one website has it, another one's going to want to have it. And it's going to happen a lot quicker than I think a lot of people expect. I think the first impacts are really going to come in the consumer space. And sort of pure play web apps. I think we'll just be able to jump on this and run with it from day one. I think in terms of enterprise things, it's going to take a little bit longer. And there are still some issues with how to traverse enterprise firewalls, how to do things like call recording if it's a contact center.
And you're referring to like trickle ice might be a good example in terms of your enterprise firewall example.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
and we're already seeing some evidence of some of these consumer apps evolving at a very early stage. I know that Chris Matthew has been working on Twellophone and Google Hangouts. I can see them using WebRTC exclusively. That'll really reduce their headache in managing infrastructure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Hangouts are great. I actually use them when I travel. Like next week I'm at the IETF, I'll actually use a Google Plus Hangout to teach my class while I'm traveling.
That's awesome. So Alan Johnston's not bored by any stretch of the imagination these days.
No, I keep busy. In the spring I teach a class called Internet Communication. And it used to be about 70-80% about SIP. And each year I teach it, I've been putting more WebRTC. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like when I start teaching it in January.
When do you think that we're going to start seeing some relatively large production rollouts of WebRTC in the wild? If you had to make a prediction.
I think it depends a lot on the quality of the initial rollout. And just how stable it is, how bug-free it is, and also how interoperable it is. To make sure that the Firefox interoperates with Chrome. And I think if those things go well, if the initial experience is positive,
yeah.
I think we probably will see some major rollouts. Within a few months, possibly.
Wow. So you think maybe very early on in 2013?
Yeah, but on the other hand, if it comes out and it doesn't quite work and it's not super stable and things like that, we could see things delayed. So it'll really depend a lot on what the underlying browser platform is like.
Correct. And what about mobile?
Yeah, mobile's going to be real interesting too. On one hand, you think, well, mobile's more closed. It's more difficult to get into that platform. But on the other hand, you have players like Opera rolling out their browser. You've got Ericsson releasing their experimental browser, and you've got Firefox who are going to use it in their mobile operating system. So it's going to be really interesting. And of course, everyone, when you think mobile, everyone wonders what's Apple going to do.
Well, Apple's has a joint project in WebKit with Google, I guess. I mean, you could look at it from that perspective, and all that WebRTC code ends up in WebKit. So, what do you think Apple's going to do?
I don't know. I mean, in theory, if you look at FaceTime, FaceTime is 3/4 of WebRTC. If they just simply exposed APIs to FaceTime, they could.
Yeah. So, I mean, FaceTime is primarily SIP and XMPP, is it not?
Yeah.
What are they using for media stack? Do you know?
I think it's just their own role. I mean, they use some unique codecs. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. The whole video codec is a big.
IETF 85 in Atlanta is going to be interesting, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the track record for this isn't good. The W3C wasn't able to get agreement on the video codec for streaming. So I don't know if the IETF is going to manage to do it for the WebRTC, but we can only try.
Then where do you think that leaves us if it comes away with a non-decision, or if it's 50-50? Where does that leave us? I mean, you've got a huge amount of experience in working with the standards bodies. You have a great idea in terms of what will happen if this is what the outcome will be. Where does that leave us?
Well, ultimately it'll put us at the mercy of the browser vendors. And if they do the right thing and work out interoperability amongst themselves, then we'll be okay. But if business concerns get in the way or other things, then we could be in trouble.
Right. So your best bet, if you're working on WebRTC today, or RTC Web, depending on which standards body you want to talk about, is to probably implement both H.264 ADC and VP8.
Yeah, my feeling is that regardless of which way things go in the standard, I think both of those codecs are going to be important.
Yeah. Okay, it was great catching up with you again, Alan.
Likewise.
Take care, and where can we find your book? WebRTCbook.com, is that the URL?
And actually, if you go to Goodreads, there's actually a book giveaway going on in Goodreads, so you can go there and enter to win a free copy of the paperback. So that's for the next 10 days. So.
Excellent. Goodreads.com.
Yep.
Okay. Alan, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Erik.